Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to you today for technical session 3, which is on intersectoral approach to nutrition security. Warm wishes to you from ADB, and very sorry that we're not all with each other today, but we have a very illustrious lineup of panelists and speakers, and I'm sure this session will be very lively and energizing. I'm your moderator, Yasmin Siddiqui. I'm the Director for the Agriculture, Environment and Natural Resources Division at ADB's Central and West Asia Regional Department. And I look forward to leading you through the session today. In this session, we're going to be presenting on-ground experiences, lessons learned, and case studies, and best practices to collectively work together on promoting nutrition security. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our very accomplished keynote speaker, Ms. Mandana Arabi, who is the Vice President of Nutrition International. Ms. Mandana will be sharing her keynote address to all of you, followed by then a lineup of panelists and then further speakers who will be sharing their insights. So I'm going to hand over to Ms. Mandana. Ms. Mandana, please, your keynote speech.
Thank you very much to the chair and to all the organizers and participants today. It's an honor and a pleasure to be part of this discussion. I'm really looking forward to a rich session. My name is Mandana Arabi, and I'm Vice President of the Global Technical Services and Chief Technical Advisor at Nutrition International. I'm going to share my presentation. So my focus today is on double burden of malnutrition and double duty actions. And I'll tell you what we mean by both of these terms. So traditionally, actions to address undernutrition and then overweight and obesity have been developed and delivered separately. And sometimes even solutions that were developed to address one inadvertently have actually even added to the burden of the other. For example, if food assistance had low quality foods contained in it and was delivered in contexts where energy intake was not an issue, it could potentially lead to obesity. So it creates another type of malnutrition in the same context. So increasingly, we need actions that can simultaneously address the, prevent or reduce the risks of both, meaning undernutrition and overweight and obesity, what we call the double burden of malnutrition, or DBM. And also, what I want to even bring additionally to this discussion that sometimes I feel has not been adequately focused on is not only the intervention themselves being, addressing this double burden, but also finding systems and platforms and levels of intervention that can address both causal pathways for over and undernutrition. And I'll describe some of those as well. Just really quick overview. I think many of us, even through our own lives and through the news, are familiar with the current situation and how nutrition is still one of the biggest factors in everybody's life and well-being, but specifically in work in the international development. We can look at child malnutrition or undernutrition here, which is defined by sometimes by being too short for their age, or too thin for their height, or too light for their age as well. So there are different ways of defining undernutrition. Stunting specifically is about height, which has been shown to be a good predictor of survival in children. So we really pay attention and have global targets for reducing stunting. When we look at the global situation of stunting, we see that the global stunting has been on the decline. But when you look at the overweight and obesity in children, in general, there has not been adequate progress. So, and at the same time, even the stunting, when you look at the current rates, we are still in need of making improvements to be able to ensure every child reaches its growth potential in the future. So both of these basically, again, the two sides of the burden are of importance at the global level. I also wanted to specifically bring the attention to just where the direction of change has been in childhood overweight. We have now the map for 2000 versus 2020, and you can just see by the changing colors in the course of 20 years. Most children with malnutrition live in Africa and Asia. In 2020, almost half of children under 5 affected by overweight lived in Asia, and more than 1/4 lived in Africa. And then as you see, significant increase in the number of overweight children has been observed in Southeast Asia and Northern Africa. My organization, Nutrition International, specifically, addresses malnutrition and undernutrition and, overall public health nutrition in several countries. So we did this study specifically in some of the countries of our focus, but I wanted to show again a little bit more in-depth look at the data. And as you see, several of these countries are in Asia. What we found is that, an estimated 8.7 million children were overweight in selected countries that we looked at, and a lot of them were in India. And again, as you see, most of these countries we are working in are addressing the double burden. They have high stunting rates, but they also have the issue of high prevalence of overweight and obesity. Another thing that we noticed is that at this moment in time, when you look at the data, part of it is affected because of the availability, but on the overweight and obesity side, adult women have a higher prevalence, and that's an age group where we notice, as you see the large column, orange columns here show the situation with higher prevalence of overweight and obesity in adult women. So in a way, when we talk about double burden, there is yet another picture, which is, for example, in the same household, you see young children in the households are undernourished, and then adult women in the same household are overweight and obese. So that could also potentially be the type of double burden that you see in the same household that unfortunately is being seen in the current nutrition and food environment situation. So why is it that we need to actually pay attention to double burden? The double burden of malnutrition is the prelude to the rapidly growing burden of non-communicable diseases. And when you look at the burden of diseases, up to 75% of deaths worldwide are related to non-communicable diseases. So when you look at this, a big portion of many of us in our lifetimes could potentially be affected by these non-communicable diseases. So increasingly, nutrition has to be an integral part of discussions of non-communicable diseases as well, NCDs. And what we know is that early life undernutrition, as early as in utero, not only predisposes children to poorer physical and cognitive development in early life, but also increases the risk of NCDs later in life. And there is increasing research coming out that shows this and shows different impacts. Based on the trends that we see, and I showed in NCDs and overweight and obesity, when we looked at our program countries, NCD rates have nearly doubled in some countries such as Bangladesh. And when you look at overweight and obesity prevalence in many of the countries, it starts to be even higher than underweight, for example, in adults, and especially in females, as I noted. And also prevalence of overweight and obesity in adolescents is evident and is increasing, especially in Asia and North Africa. However, an issue that we have is also not having adequate data on adolescents, and that's a population group that is of concern, but unfortunately also a lot of places we still don't have a good systematic way of collecting data on their nutrition situation. So from the double burden of malnutrition, we were moving to looking at non-communicable diseases, and I just wanted to also show how the NCDs are changing over time, and the fact that global burden of non-communicable diseases, especially in lower and middle income countries, is on the rise. And all-cause deaths due to NCDs have nearly doubled in many countries that my organization has been working in. So In terms of kind of policy action and attention, there has been a lot of progress in bringing attention to the double burden of malnutrition and NCDs. I just wanted to highlight a few here that we do have actually global targets for reducing diet-related non-communicable diseases. We have global targets for improving nutrition indicators across the board, such as improving breastfeeding practices, reducing childhood stunting and wasting, improving anemia in women on childbearing birth and childbearing age, and low birth weight in infants. So we have actually important targets across the spectrum of nutrition that will allow us, if we reach those targets and focus and make investments in those areas, hopefully we will be able to reduce these trends that I showed and the burden of non-communicable diseases in the future. We still need better methodologies, though, for estimating the economic impact of double burden of malnutrition. I wanted to highlight this again because this is like the state of research and knowledge that's being produced today, as well as being able to show more and evaluate cost effectiveness of these actions that I will talk a little bit about in my discussion today, what those actions are. So while we know that the trends and the impacts and causalities are there and the evidence is strong, we are trying to strengthen the evidence on the economic side and the cost effectiveness side of this as well. What we know, though, when we look at the studies of the impact of these interventions on nutrition in general on well-being and productivity, we know that there's a significant economic burden due to loss of productivity and raised health expenditures because of non-communicable diseases. So this is on top of course, the cost of undernutrition in childhood and the fact that it increases mortality and morbidity in children. This is about, once this leads to non-communicable diseases later in life, there's additional burden of this loss of productivity and increased health expenditures that then the society will have to do. So what we want to do, I did want to also set the tone by focusing on the many opportunities that we have for action, and especially the importance of being in this session today, which is beyond my maybe ordinary focus of disciplinary discussions with health and nutrition, and really thinking about planning and higher level and multi-sectoral action. I wanted to bring attention to two factors that in my work and in our experience really seem to be making a difference. One is this whole concept of double duty actions. We talked about double burden, so now we talk about double duty actions, meaning interventions that could affect both over and under nutrition. And then the concept of no missed opportunities in programming. And I'll cover that a little bit as well. So Lancet 2020, the most recent Lancet series in nutrition, talked about the double duty actions, and they started this terminology. They include actions in the health services, in social safety nets, in educational settings, agriculture, food systems. So it's not just health. This is about having all these key sectors integrating nutrition interventions. The type of nutrition interventions that could be double burden, the double duty include in early life nutrition interventions, for example, supplementing mothers during pregnancy with the nutrients that they need, or early and exclusive breastfeeding for children. It's about diet quality, it's about the food environment, and it's about the socioeconomic factors that affect malnutrition. So again, interconnected factors that we need to also address with interventions. Some of these interventions, for example, include improving the kind of growth and health, taste preference of young children, for example, in early life. So this would improve early infant feeding practices. It's about focusing on diets that are rich in nutritious foods and balanced and healthy, and they have enough diversity. It's about food environments so that people are in situations that encourages them to make good choices, and healthy diets are available to them, they're affordable and they're appealing. And also it's about knowledge, attitude, income, economic situations. And we really need a multitude of actions at different parts of this framework to address the double burden of malnutrition. I wanted to mention also, we talked about double burden and double duty actions There's an interesting research that currently, again, I've been working on with the Harvard School of Public Health, which is about looking at the impact of these early nutrition interventions. Let's say, for example, providing nutrition supplements, iron and folate, for example, acid to pregnant women, and how it not only affects the health of the mother, it reduces anemia and improves birth outcomes, the health of the baby immediately, it reduces low birth weight and improves health, birth outcomes, but also the same intervention affecting the next generation, meaning that the babies born to these mothers who received supplementation during pregnancy later in life will have delayed onset of NCDs, which means then saved productivity and years with better quality of life due to basically the previous generation having received good nutrition. So this is really not beyond even double duty action. This is about having triple benefits, which is in the same generation, but also over to the second generation as well. So here, what we did, we looked at data across cohorts of populations on where women, mothers had received micronutrient supplementation during pregnancy. We looked at the birth outcomes in their babies. And then we looked at future chronic disease onset in blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes, serum lipids, so an array of non-communicable disease risk factors and things like heart disease and stroke and cancer, to see how this very early nutrition interventions in the mothers could actually really delay the onset of later NCDs in their children's generation. And the results were significant, which even by itself, the fact that it's significant is important, because this effect could be diluted when it goes through generation to generation. Just as an example, when you look at diabetes cases averted, if the mothers had received multiple micronutrient supplements, the pink one in the middle, you will see that 3.3 million cases could be averted per year across the countries that we looked at. And this is almost half of the all-cause mortality numbers that could be attributed, let's say, to something like reducing the sugar-sweetened beverage consumption. So these numbers, while they may not look extremely high, they are actually significant, and they give us, again, a triple benefit in the second generation. The more reason for investments in these kinds of relatively simple early nutrition interventions to address both undernutrition, but also the non-communicable diseases in the future generations.
Excuse me, Mandana.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. You have 2 minutes to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, wrapping up. Just wanted to again show a map of what we found out, how these early nutrition interventions can benefit future generations. And actually the benefits that we showed in South Asia far outweighed the deaths delayed in, for example, Africa. So I think in South Asia, because of the higher prevalence of these non-communicable diseases, and also the deficiencies that still exist in early nutrition, it's possible to actually have really good impact in the long run for a reduction of NCDs. Since I don't have a lot of time, I just wanted to focus on this concept of no missed opportunities as well. So it's not just the intervention themselves that have to be selected well. We have to choose right interventions, but it has to be also at the right sectors that have lowest cost, highest impact, sustainable mechanisms, and at the right level, both upstream and downstream. And all of this needs good analytical, technical involvement in planning. And that's where nutritionists, economists, experts in governance, finance need to be working together. The more reason to also be coming together with our expertise cross-sectorally to be able to do good cross-sectoral systems interventions. Systems intervention are about basically working at all these levels, no missed opportunities, looking how sectors can actually be tapped into, and where are some opportunities for leveraging sectors such as social protection, education, agriculture for embedding nutrition. The key messages for me are yes, multi-sectoral nutrition is important, but not attempting to integrate nutrition into every sector. This has to be, again, based on analysis of the context, on opportunities, and on what gives us the best bang for the buck. So it has to be well thought and based on data and evidence. Significant difference made by the right tools and necessary technical expertise, as I mentioned. And attempting to ensure nutrition programs are effectively integrated into other sectors, if and as relevant, with an intentional design to improve nutrition outcomes or determinants. So it's not any sectors and it's not any nutrition, it's the right kind of intervention in the right sectors and at the right levels. And in summary, just again to highlight the importance of thinking about the multiple burdens of malnutrition and non-communicable disease, especially in Asia, I think we really have enough evidence to know that it's important to make investments in reducing. We have opportunities for investments in these triple benefit actions, especially early maternal and early childhood interventions. We know some of these interventions and we are able to demonstrate the impact. We need data and reliable expert analyses to help us identify the right mix of interventions and the right platforms to be leveraged. And today's discussion, I'm sure, will give you some examples of what some of those interventions and policy and intervention actions are. And just I want to add and end on this, as we all know, nutrition is central to addressing increasing burden of malnutrition, and especially I think within the post-pandemic recovery effects, where we are all trying to do our best to take advantage of resources and be synergistic, there are opportunities for this integration. For example, in the social safety net programs for nutrition that we can take advantage of. Thank you very much again for your time and looking forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mandana. That was really excellent insights. And I hung on to one of your phrases from that, which was, it's not just health. And I think that's a really overarching point that you've made. And I'm sure we'll come back to that discussion and making the right interventions. So thank you very much. And I think we can now move to our panel discussion. And we've got a number of, again, very illustrious panelists. I'd like to invite Professor Lada Mosuan, who is the Professor of Pediatrics at the Prince of Songkla University in Thailand. Professor Lada, you have 8 minutes to present on your perspectives. And I will step in just a minute before with my video on, just to maintain time. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you, Yasmin. I would like to share my screen. Yes, good afternoon. Yeah, before I'm sharing what we are doing in Thailand, I would like to show the Thailand nutrition profile. Like many other countries in this region, Thailand is facing triple burden of malnutrition. You can see that the prevalence of childhood overweight is on course to meeting the global nutrition target, but that is only among the under 5. Overweight prevalence among the school-age children and obesity in adults, as well as the diabetes prevalence rising, along with the failure to reduce the childhood stunting, wasting, and anemia of women in the reproductive age. A national health examination survey was carried out during COVID epidemic in 2020, and we do not see much change in this trend. Nutrition policies and programs in Thailand mainly come under these 4 ministries, with Ministry of Public Health taking the lead and supporting by Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Education, and Ministry of Interior. Thai Health Foundation, Thai Health Promotion Fund, an autonomous body, government body, has worked with civil society organization and NGOs to support policy process and national level campaign for food security, food safety, and nutrition security. And the academia is to provide the evidence-based technical support, and the private sector is engaged to advocate for their commitment to support optimal nutrition. Thailand has addressed determinants of maternal and child nutrition and drivers of NCD to this following system. For the health system, Department of Health has launched the new edition of DRR in 2020, and food-based dietary guidelines are being revised accordingly as a tool for communicating healthy eating behaviors. To tackle micronutrient deficiency problem, iodine, iron, folic acid supplement is included in the essential drug list for pregnant and lactating women. Iron supplementation to infants and children and iron folic acid supplementation to women is included in the health benefit package financially supported by the National Health Security Office. For the education system, school lunch and meal are provided for all children in the early child care, kindergarten, and primary school. And some municipalities pay extra funding for breakfast. To make sure the quality of school meal is up to the standard, Ministry of Education and Ministry of Interior have endorsed the use of Thai school lunch program, which is a web-based program designed by the NECTEC and the INMU for preparation of nutritious school meal within the allocated budget. The program will check the nutrition quality of the selected menu, as well as checking the content of fibers, sodium, and sugar for the reduction of dietary risk for NCDs. And for Farm to School initiative, I will talk in detail in the next slide. For food system, several measures have been in place to create healthy food environments, including Infant Food Marketing Control Act, sugar sweetened beverage tax, and the front of pack labeling. We have Healthier Choice logo, a voluntary one, aimed to promote healthier diets for NCD prevention. We have nutrient profile model for classifying foods, snacks, and beverages for food and nutrition policy actions, particularly for restriction of marketing activities to children. It is also used in Food Choice app, which applies the traffic light concept to provide information for selection of the right product for health. The only national food fortification program is universal salt iodization, which has been implemented since 2011. For the Farm to School initiative, as I mentioned earlier, early child care, school, and kindergarten use Thai school lunch program to provide a nutritious meal to children. In the border patrol police schools, the school agriculture project initiated by Her Royal Highness Princess Mahachakri Sirinthorn has provided food for lunch, and in conjunction with other measures has been successful in reduced malnutrition. The Healthy Kids, Healthy Food projects has adopted the concept to implement in other schools all over the country. Linking school meals to local farmers group has been initiated in some areas. In one district, school use Thai school lunch program to plan menu in advance and send a list of agricultural produce generated by this program to the local farmer groups. So then they can plan for a calendar for planting crops and animal farming to meet the school need. In another sub-district, the local authority mapped local producers based on safe farming practices. And the National Food Board has included the indicators of use safe local produce for school food management. To facilitate this link, the NECTEC has designed the Farm to School digital platform to connect the school demand from the Thai school lunch system with the local supply. This will shorten the food supply chain, and school will be able to get safe food they need all year round at a reasonable price. And farmers are confident that there will be a market for their produce. In the future, together with deep tech startup, this platform will also be able to manage e-payment and logistics as well. In the meantime, Housing Authority of Thailand is signing a MOU to use Farm to School platform and Handy Sense, which is a smart agriculture technology to create jobs and incomes for tenants. And Bank of Agriculture also interested to provide extra funding for school lunch to school beach purchase from farmers in its network. So all these are some interesting initiatives using intersectoral approach to achieve nutrition security that I would like to share with you. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Lada. Really fascinating. I have to say, this is so useful for particularly those of us who work in development banks. This type of cross-sectoral approach is exactly what we're trying to further consider. And I think you've presented some wonderful examples. I must say I was quite surprised to hear about this triple burden of malnutrition, not expecting that in a case like Thailand, but I'm really keen to hear more, perhaps in the Q&A on this farm to school initiative. I believe it would be very relevant for the countries we cover as well. So thank you very much. I'd like to now invite Ms. Britta Schumacher, who's the Senior Nutritionist at the Regional Bureau for Asia Pacific, based in Bangkok. Britta, we look forward to listening to your insights and thoughts on this cross-sectoral approach. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. I also want to share my screen so that I can walk you through a couple of the diagrams that I have. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you. And if you could enlarge your slides into presentation mode. So we can see the slides, Britta. They're just not on the presentation mode.
Yeah, and I'm wondering why.
Now they're in presentation mode, but we see your notes page.
Yeah. Let me just start. Let me just start this one, so we don't waste time. Yeah, thank you very much. So I would like to talk today about some examples how we support governments in the region as WFP on linking food systems, social protection, and health to actually address some of the drivers of malnutrition, to enable healthy diets, and especially for those who need it most, which are the most food insecure, the poorest, and also those nutritionally at risk. We have heard in the keynote speech sufficiently how important it is to address the double burden or also the triple burden of malnutrition, and how it is important to take action for now and also for the next generation. So what we know is that poor diets are an underlying cause of all forms of malnutrition, and that's why it is very important to enable healthy diets to actually move forward on improving malnutrition around the life cycle. So that we all are on the same page, I would like to show this slide that sketches out a little bit what type of diets are we talking about. You can see here that we distinguish between 3 and in some cases 4 types of diets. The energy sufficient diet, which has a high affordability of the population. 99% can afford an energy sufficient diet, but that's not a nutrient adequate or a healthy diet. So when it comes to nutrient adequate diets, people who cannot afford it are already 21%. And when it comes to a healthy diet that has more diversity and representation in what they consume or what we consume, greater dietary diversity, is actually in this, across these countries that you see at the bottom of the slide, 58% are not in a position to afford that. And this was exacerbated, of course, recently over the last couple of years by the COVID-19 pandemic, which came as a shock. And according to a study that will shortly be released, that we've done in collaboration with the IFPRI, that showed that in, for example, these three countries that we have here, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Myanmar, the COVID-19 pandemic increased the percentage of people not affording healthy diets by 12 to 15 percentage points. It is also to be noted that the cost of a healthy diet is relatively similar across countries, but that it exceeds the poverty line. And that's also why we have such a high number of people not affording it. Now, when it comes to addressing those who are the poorest quintile of the population and the most nutritionally at risk, knowing that there's a strong correlation between poverty and malnutrition in the region and also other parts of the world, what are the sectors that we can use to reach those? And the social protection sector obviously comes to our mind very quickly, because they are the social assistance programs are the ones that target those populations. But what we have seen also is that the social transfers, whether it's cash or food, are often not sufficient to even permit affordability of a nutritious diet. But there are ways of enhancing the affordability of healthy diets and also nutritious diets. And I would like to give one example today from Pakistan. Pakistan's government has decided at one point in time to use one of their largest social protection programs, previously Benazir Income Support Program, and then ESA's program that reaches overall 5 million households, to link nutrition into it. This was triggered by the fact that the 2018 and even previously demographic and health surveys showed that something was way too high, more than 40% still in 2018, more than 15% acute malnutrition, and almost 2/3 of the population, or more than half of the population of the women of reproductive age also having anemia. So basically standing in the way of social and economic progress of the country. And so some key evidence or landmark studies, like the cost of hunger that was carried out a few years back, and the filter nutrient gap analysis that we are supporting governments with to understand nutrient gaps and affordability, have shown that 2/3 of the population cannot afford a nutritious diet. And the cost of the diet basically, the cost of hunger study basically showed that the malnutrition costs the country basically $7.6 billion annually. That triggered, at one point, it triggered a number of actions looking into how can we reach the poorest, how can we link sectors together to not only focus on the cash transfers to address poverty alleviation, but also address the very high malnutrition rates. And it led into to a policy dialogue and the design of the redesign of the program, or design of a complementary sub-projects, if you want, called ESA's Nationuma, that actually added to the cash transfer that goes to the households and overall the components that you see on the right-hand side of the slide, which are infant and young child feeding practices, and also the provision of a specialized nutritious food that is locally produced through the private sector, that helps meeting young children and pregnant lactating women meet their nutrient requirements. In addition to connecting to immunization and child growth and routine services, antenatal and postnatal care, and a conditional cash stipend. So this was, it's a very successful process. The model was tested and with a strong evaluation framework, ready to scale up. And now it's being scaled up and expanded to 1.5 million women and children, hopefully by 2024. So this is one of the successful examples that I wanted to show. Just quickly, another one, which is more a summary. So another area that we are supporting is large-scale rice fortification, which addresses the prevailing high level of anemia and micronutrient deficiencies in the region, which that's why we often talk about triple burden and not only double burden. It's a truly links different sectors together, has started 10 to 15 years ago in Asia, spearheaded by India and Bangladesh, and now you see the countries that are on the slides, 11 countries that have engaged in post-harvest large-scale fortification, working with the private sector to ensure the supplies of the fortified rice kernels, making it available on a market, but using, and that is specific here, delivery platforms like the social protection and also education system to reach vulnerable people first, also school-age children or adolescents, and because some governments target the school meals programs to the most vulnerable areas. And the health system's contribution to this is basically making sure that the regulatory framework is in place, food safety and quality standards, and then the coordination with other interventions like supplementation and like other interventions enhancing dietary diversity for healthy diets, which should always be complementary to an intervention like fortification. So this is an example, and we have several countries moving forward. Just recently, we have talked with, we've done the nutrient gap analysis in Indonesia and identified a potential opportunity to link fortified rice into their Sembako cash voucher program that reaches 15 million people across the country and addresses also inequalities and enhances affordability. So I think I'm coming towards the end of my time. So let me stop here, and if there is more time in the Q&As, I can come back to some of the elements.
Thank you very much, Britta. Thanks again for a very informative presentation. Again, fascinating to learn more and more about the links between nutrition, poverty, and thank you for sharing on this linking sectors, reaching the poorest and the SRS program example. I'm going to speed along now and introduce our next panelists. We have Victor Ochieng Owino, who is the nutrition specialist at the Division of Human Health, International Atomic Energy Agency, and Kofi Bimpong, who is the plant breeder and geneticist at the Department of Nuclear Sciences and Applications, also at the IAEA. And I'm sure many of you are fascinated about how is the IAEA here, just as we were. So look forward to hearing from both of you. Over to you. And 8 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invite to have us today from the IAEA. We have a short presentation, not by PowerPoint, and we will try to help understand how to contribute to evidence base for improved diet quality and nutrition security through the use of nuclear techniques. And I'll do the first part, then my colleague Kofi Bimpong will do the second part. And Mandana couldn't have set the stage for our presentation because she mentioned really the key pillars that malnutrition is a multifactorial phenomenon and influenced by many moving parts, but we need to pay attention to intergenerational factors, the link between maternal-child nutrition, but more importantly, she challenged us on how do we actually evaluate impact and how do we generate reliable data to help us evaluate impact. So just like the double burden of malnutrition is influenced by many factors, nutrition security is a function of many factors within a complex and dynamic food systems influenced by several external forces, for example, climate change, dietary transitions, just to mention two. And diet quality in itself, Mandana mentioned this as a very important pillar in the whole mix. So diet quality has two important dimensions as far as I'm concerned. One is the adequacy of the food consumed. So in enough quantity to meet recommended nutrient levels to sustain the human system beyond daily maintenance, of course, including any physiological requirements like pregnancy and rapid growth. Number two, quality refers to the balance and bioavailability of nutrients for use by the human body. However, we also learned in Mandana's presentation that Africa and Asia are the most affected regions, and largely because we rely mainly on plant-based diets, which are associated with micronutrient, but also macronutrient deficiencies, partly because of the low content of those nutrients, but also because of the presence of anti-nutritive factors in those foods. And so there is more evidence needed then on nutrient absorption from these kinds of diets, so that to help us be able to design messages to improve health and nutrition outcomes. And this could include functional outcomes such as body composition, the influence of gut health, and to design policy frameworks and interventions to guarantee
Victor, we appear to be losing your voice. In fact, your screen is also frozen. Are you able to hear us? Maybe I can request Kofi to step in. Kofi, can you hear me?
Yes, Jasmine, I can hear you. Okay,
I'm sorry,
then.
Victor, if I may request you to step in, and we'll see if we can connect with Victor.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think in Victor's preamble, he reiterated what I think the keynote panelist said, that nutrition have to be an integral part in food security, which I agree absolutely with it. But interestingly, specific breeding or crop improvement for nutrition has extremely been limited, because food security has remained the predominant driver, whereby the focus has been on yield enhancement or stability in relation to stresses such as the abiotic and the biotic stresses that we all know. However, at the IAEA here, we all know that we are using the approach of mutation induction. And mutation, as we know, is a heritable change in the genetic material of a living organism. And this can lead to the development of a new variety, cultivar, or germplasm, which can be selected through a conventional breeding method for trait of interest, especially in terms of nutrition security. We can focus the selection towards quality and also preferred end users by the farmers. However, at the IAEA here, most of our nutritional enhancement project are extremely limited through one of our channels that we use to communicate with member states and farmers, which we call the technical cooperation project that we did with member states. Very few research is actually focused on nutritional enhancement. But the good news is that just yesterday, a day before yesterday, so me, Victor, and others, have a meeting where we are proposing a new coordinated research program to use nuclear techniques to generate diversity in most of the underutilized or the neglected crops for productivity enhancement, whereby we want to intervene with some of these modern molecular or genomic tools to do our routine profiling and selection of developed underutilized crops that will have the quality in terms of nutritional qualities that we are looking up to support food security. In doing this, we are also looking at the way of enhancing the capacity of these member states so that they will be in a position across all the sectors to be in a position to involve themselves in coming up to help us all solve the challenge that we are facing in this food insecurity in terms of the nutrition. So I believe in supporting multi-sectorial approach for food security. There is a key need that all of us come together, be it in terms of crop improvement, the advocacies and all the rest, to be together to achieve the objectives as required. Thank you very much, and I think Victor is back online.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Victor, we can hear you. Due to the time constraints, maybe Victor, maybe 1 more minute from your side, if that's okay. Go, Victor, we seem to have lost you again. Okay, we have lost Victor again. So perhaps we can request Victor to come in at the end with any responses to the Q&A session, and that will give him an opportunity to also provide his insight. So thank you, Victor and Kofi. Kofi, thanks for sharing on, again, this point about joining hands. You touched upon capacity enhancement and also this need to emphasize on breeding, not just focusing on yield enhancement. So moving swiftly. I'm going to now, we're going to enter into this revisiting and reflection series of presentations. And I'd like to invite our first presenter, Kaz Maruyama, who's the president and representative director of DSM from Japan. He's, sorry, DSM Japan. So Kaz, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you, Yasmin, for introduction. I hope you are not seeing my desktop. In this session, I have the 8 minutes, and I try to share some the real world example of the multi-sectoral approach to the nutrition intervention. First of all, the DSM is headquartered in Netherlands. We are the global leader of the health, nutrition, and bioscience, and our products include the micronutrients like vitamin or the minerals for food and feed ingredients. So we are one of the leading company of those the micronutrients. And at the same time, we are known as the kind of leader of the sustainability and business. And as already the Mandana breeder, everybody already mentioned, that we are living in the world with a lot of issues with our food systems. And as many of you know, the last year, the UN convened the UN Food System Summit. And I don't explain everything, but the part of that is for sure the hidden hunger and then malnutrition, double burden, and also the nutrition-related diseases like non-communicative diseases, and also right-hand side you are seeing the livelihood issues, inequality, and a lot of the low-scale farmers actually living a very low income status. That is the big issue in the food system. And as I said, DSM has a capability to improve that situation with our products. And that's why we believe we also have the responsibility to make the meaningful impact on the global food system. So that's why we are working together with the public sector, a lot of the intersectoral the approach with those issues. And the last year on the Food System Summit of the United Nations, DSM actually made an announcement and published the 5 our own food system commitment you see here. And today for the malnutrition issues, I picked up the 2. So the one enable the micronutrient gap of 800 million vulnerable people to be closed by 2030. And the other one is the right-hand side, supporting the livelihood of 500,000 smallholder farmers by 2030. So those 2 are especially related to the malnutrition issue, and we are working on these issues as a business because we believe from the private sector, if we make this the kind of profitable business, we don't need to make a lot of profit, but make the profitable business, we can make it scalable and also sustainable in the long run. So we believe from the private sector perspective, we want to solve those issues with our capability and also make that profitable. And today I'd like to share the 3 examples. One is multi-micronutrient supplementation for the maternal child the nutrition. This is exactly what Mandana mentioned in her presentation. But DSM is actually partnering with some partners, including World Food Program, of course. But here I share some example, like working with Sight and Life Foundation in Bangladesh to make the research how to address the supply chain issues. It is difficult actually to bring this to the people, the vulnerable people who really need the support. So that we are doing the how we can solve those issues and then running the project in Bangladesh. And also working with UNICEF in Nigeria, and also the World Vision International in Philippines. We are providing these the MMS with this the project, and then trying to solve the issues around the malnutrition in the early phase, first 1,000 days of the malnutrition. Another example is the rice fortification. So as this one was mentioned by Brita, so the simple food fortification is one of the powerful and low-cost way to improve the malnutrition. And DSM actually developed a new technology. It is kind of gigantic pasta machine. So we use the rice powder and also the micronutrients powder to make the rice kernels, fortified rice kernels, and you can mix that into the regular rice and a very small amount, and making the nutrient rich the meals, even in the region which have the diet with a lot of rice or with a very small amount of the other meals. So we are making a significant investment in Asia in terms of this technology, and we are making a local manufacturing facility. And then the most recent project is India, because the Indian Prime Minister recently announced the they mandate the fortified rice in the social security safety net channels. So we are running this project with the government and also the World Food Program, and also we are working with the Scope Meals Coalitions, which is the outcome of the United Nations Food System Summit. And the final one is this is a very innovative business model, and we believe this one can be applicable in Asia, maybe with the Asian Development Bank. But this is the public-private joint venture between DSM and the Rwandan government in Africa, with a blended investment from World Bank, IFC, and also European public, the financial sector, FMO and CDC. And this company is actually doing the social enterprise, making kind of the fortified policy, and to make the resilient local food system. Because for a long time, the people say the support, nutrition support in Africa maybe the European company bring their own products and then nothing actually developed in Africa locally. So this is the challenge. We try to make the local food system with the government and also the investment organization. And then we established this one in 2016, and then until now, this company sources the raw material from the local smallholder farmers, 130K, and also we reached 1.6 million consumers, and we created 300 direct jobs. So, and until now, this company get to be the kind of profitable company. They are running this business now in Asia, in Africa. So we are thinking to quadruple the business in Sub-Saharan Africa. That is the connected to our food system commitment, the 500K smallholder farmers that improve the level of their lives. So this model is very innovative, and we believe there is a possibility, for example, like we can do the similar thing in Asia as well. And of course, we need the collaboration with these the partners. Otherwise, just one company cannot make this happen. So thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Kaz. Again, really fascinating. And thank you for bringing the private sector perspectives. You've already tempted us with the Rwanda model and your suggestion that maybe it's something we could consider for ADB to think about more deeply. But I think this point you made at the end, it's so vital for this session as well, that one alone cannot achieve these results or deliver. It's really about us working jointly, holding hands across all of the diverse people on this panel today as well. So thank you so much, Kaz. And I'm sure, again, there's many questions coming in. I'm sure there'll be some for you as well. And we'll come back to you later in the Q&A. I'd now like to invite Jody Harris, who is our lead expert from the World Vegetable Center. Jody, again, welcome to the panel and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, and hello from Bangkok. So I was asked to speak without PowerPoint, so let me try. And first, let me introduce World Veg for anyone who isn't yet familiar with us. So the World Vegetable Center is an international non-profit institute for vegetable research and development. And we undertake research, also piloting of innovations, and scaling of best social and technical practices for impact across the food system. And we use vegetables as an entry point, really to work towards healthier diets and better livelihoods without damaging the environment. And then the World Veg Gene Bank holds the world's largest public collection of vegetable seed, and that's a really important global resource for breeding these resilient, productive and nutritious vegetable varieties. So why do we do all that? So one objective, as I said, is resilient livelihoods through vegetable production and value chains. But our other key objective is particularly relevant to our session today, to build healthier lives through diverse and vegetable-rich diets. So we know that vegetables are an essential and an irreplaceable, actually, part of a healthy diet and contribute to uniquely, really, to diet quality for nutrition. So the health benefits of vegetables obviously stem from their high content of vitamins and minerals and fibers and antioxidant compounds and polyphenols relative to other food groups. But around the world, we know that most people's diets are low in vegetables, despite their nutritional importance. Low vegetable consumption is a key contributing factor to micronutrient malnutrition, which has been mentioned today, to child stunting, and to overweight and obesity and its attendant metabolic diseases. So that double or even triple burden of malnutrition that everyone's been talking about. And vegetables really are the classic sort of double or triple duty food that address over and under nutrition simultaneously. So in terms of the Asia-Pacific region, which I'm going to focus on, global studies really agree that East Asia has one of the highest vegetable consumption rates in the world, but the Pacific Island countries also in this region have among the lowest. In general, Asia is the continent with the highest vegetable consumption in the world, but still only 29% of countries reach the recommendation for vegetable consumption on average. So that's still too low. And then at an individual level, we know that around 30% of people in China, for instance, are able to meet vegetable intake recommendations, but only 1% in Nepal. So a huge variation even within this region that we need to address. And of course, national statistics mask huge inequalities in vegetable consumption between different populations within countries. So of course, we need to address those inequalities. And then even in countries with high vegetable intake, we have issues like food safety. So World Veg studies in Asia have shown that pesticide use in vegetables, for instance, is 10 times higher than in rice. And that 80% of pesticide use in vegetables is overuse. We don't need to use that much, even if we need to use some. So we also need to make sure that more vegetables means safe vegetables for people and also, of course, for the planet. So how is World Veg addressing vegetables for more nutritious diets then? Well, in this region, we have both the highest and lowest vegetable consumption in the world. And one thing this tells us is that we can't treat this region as a single entity, but we have to understand the food system context of different countries and the equity profiles of different populations within countries to effectively address some of these issues. So World Veg takes a food system approach. So we want to understand the place that vegetables and in particular local or traditional varieties have in people's diets in different contexts and population groups. So we might use national data sets or conduct surveys to understand how vegetables fit into diets. We want to understand why people choose their vegetable consumption patterns in different contexts. So we undertake social research into socio-cultural and microeconomic reasons for vegetable choice. We also know, of course, and people have mentioned it, that people's choices are conditioned by their context, particularly with an equity lens. So we take research into food environments to understand things like availability, accessibility, convenience, safety, price affordability of different vegetables in different contexts. We undertake research into vegetable supply, from seed systems to breeding trials to post-harvest practices, to understand how value chains make different vegetables available for the diet. And we undertake research to uncover how policy and governance and actions in the private sector and civil society shape food systems differently in different places and for different people. And then we use that research to design and evaluate interventions in collaboration with partners and to advocate for policy change in support of these vegetable-rich, healthy diets. So what are we doing in the Asia-Pacific region specifically? We have a lot of examples of World Veg research for healthy diets and better nutrition here in Asia-Pacific. So we've recently completed a study of how prices and affordability of healthy vegetable-rich diets changed during COVID-19 in Thailand and the Philippines. And there we find that low-income populations in the Philippines were less able to afford a healthy diet than those in Thailand, both before and during the pandemic. And that in both countries, government social protection packages were vital in averting worse impacts on diet affordability. We have many years of research on the impact of home and school gardening interventions across the region, showing the importance of home-produced vegetables for family diets, but also the potential of raising children's interest in healthy eating through gardening early in life. We have a major project in Cambodia and Laos to scale off-season production technologies for vegetable crops to make vegetables more available for diets year-round. With support and collaboration from ADB, our partners in this meeting today, we recently completed a study on food safety in fruit and vegetable value chains in Vietnam and Bangladesh. And we find that, of course, urban consumers are increasingly concerned about food safety, particularly pesticide residues, but that current value chains and national food control systems are largely unable to guarantee food safety. So we suggest some entry points for change. And then we're currently co-designing a study on food environments and vegetable consumption in those Pacific Island countries to understand the food environment experience of vegetable producing households in countries with such a low intake. So World Veg work on vegetable-rich and safe and healthy diets in the region spans across the food system, literally from seed to what we eat. We focus on food environments as the context for food choices affecting nutrition, as we're talking about today. But we also draw on decades of World Veg research on vegetable breeding, on conservation of traditional species, on safe and sustainable production, and on the economics of vegetables to really try and link farm to fork for better nutrition. We work very much across the health and agriculture sectors, so the key intersectoral focus of this session. So we're really happy to be part of this forum. It's nice to be here with everybody, and we very much look forward to continuing those partnerships. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Jodie. Thanks for, I think you hit the nail on the head with the opening line. So what does World Veg do? So thank you for sharing with us as well and highlighting the efforts that you're making in the Asia Pacific region. I think, again, number of points you've touched upon, all the way from the food safety to looking at the COVID impacts, and then the nutritious diets and the value of vegetables. I think this is very, very relevant for all of the work that we're doing across all of our sub-regions as well. And definitely even for me, that some of the countries I cover in Central West are highly lacking in nutrition, particularly from vegetables. So again, I'm sure there'll be in the Q&A some opportunity to have this discussion further. I'd like to now invite our final speaker for this session, and he is Ahmed Omar. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Vital Agri-Nutrients based in Pakistan. And Ahmed, thank you very much for joining us, and I'm going to hand over to you to run through the points.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to talk about the nexus between fortified grains, soil, and specialty fertilizers, and how it impacts food safety and food security. So in case of Pakistan, 70% of all the calorie intake comes from grains, and 70% approximately of the grain that provides that nutrition is wheat. And about half of that wheat is grown in the close proximity, that is the rural areas of Pakistan. So it's a very narrow piece of area, relatively, which provides grains, which provides majority of the nutrition to the people. And if the soil becomes depleted of important minerals, which we have been talking about, such as zinc and such as iron, then it does not augur well for the food system. And therefore, the grains which are consumed by the children, the mother, and the population at large does not carry these important minerals. So the approach that we have taken is to look at this soil, make maps of different areas, and then use those soil maps to determine what kind of specialty fertilizer is required. The different interventions that have been discussed in the past, if you look at them, they are concerned about post-harvest, or most of them are related to post-harvest. What we are talking about is pre-harvest. So the approach suggests, or I would argue, that if you apply the nutrients which are missing in the soil, it will not only result in a more healthy crop, a higher yield, but it will also result in improvement in the quality of the fruit, vegetable, or the grain which is being produced. And that will result in the vital minerals, at least, becoming part of the food system. Unfortunately, over the last 50 years of extensive agricultural practices taking place, the focus has been on the major nutrients as far as the governments are concerned and as far as the fertilizer industry is concerned. So you hear companies talk about and governments talk about the major fertilizers such as the ureas, such as the DAPs, but they hardly talk about the importance of micronutrients or how these micronutrients can be fortified, can be gelled with the major fertilizers, and how value-added fertilizers can be produced, which in return, as I have said, can result in better quality of grain produced. In 2015, we partnered with one of the provincial governments here in Pakistan, and we started drawing soil maps. And over 3 years, we were able to get about 2 million data points in the province of Punjab. Using that data, we have now mapped crop-specific and area-specific crop nutrition planning. And we are already seeing the results. The thing that I find very fascinating is that it's a totally private sector driven initiative. Apart from the fact that, yes, as far as the diagnosis was concerned, as far as making of the maps was concerned, it was publicly funded. But how those maps are being used in Pakistan, I think, hopefully in the next few years, we will have the evidence to show that it not only has impacted the yield, but it has also resulted in the vital source of where most of our food grows, which is the soil. And unfortunately, we had seen evidence that the soil fertility had been in decline for the last many decades. And in case of Pakistan, more than 90% of the food is grown from these soils. So if the soil health is not right, and their soil is becoming depleted of vital nutrients, not just micro, but also macronutrients, it's just a matter of time before it starts to seriously impact food security and the food system. So that's the approach that Vital Agri-Nutrient has taken. We feel that in the years to come, we will be able to demonstrate that it does not require a lot of public funding. The private sector is already getting engaged more and more with the farmers and demonstrating them how the use of a different set of fertilizers is not only impacting their yields, but how it is also impacting the health parameters of their own families. Because most of the farmers, they feed their own grains to their families and to themselves. The second thing that I want to talk about is related to water. So like other major Asia Pacific countries, Pakistan is also a major producer of rice. And rice on average, the way it is cultivated in Pakistan, takes about 3,000 liters of water to produce 1 kg of rice. As more and more fresh water is used to produce rice, on a per calorie basis, it is, and if you draw a pegging order, it is right at the bottom. So that is why it is important to use water in a judicious way, so that it is made available for to bring other areas under cultivation and to grow more grains and more fruits and more vegetables. So what we found that the sowing method in countries like Pakistan is something which has been relying a lot on extensive use of water, and farmers have been using water more than is required by the crop, primarily because of the lack of knowledge and information. So fortunately, with the recent developments in satellite technology and remote sensing, it is now becoming more convenient and more reliable to actually have the information whether the crop is under water stress or not. And that's also true in case of rice. So we are using that technology to educate our farmers, to inform them when they actually need to irrigate and when they are abusing the water. Therefore, I think if you look at both of these vital resources, namely soil and water, I think they are very important if we have to ensure a food security, and it will not take one sector. So it has to be the fertilizer sector, artificial intelligence, technology companies which are making these remote sensing equipment, and of course government, to all of them to come together and then to see that the resources are used in a manner which is sustainable. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emma. Again, very insightful. I'm learning this really very much for the first time about the work that your organization, your company is doing, but again, very relevant. And as you touched upon that final point of a couple of points you made at the end about not just soil, it's about water, it's about how we're looking across different users as well and finding those combined solutions. And I think technology, innovation, science, application, and different partners, as we've learned through this presentation, and panelists' viewpoints is vital. So to our audience, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of the panel's presentations, and now we're going to have the Q&A session. For the Q&A session, may I request, I'm going to request probably Victor, who didn't get a chance to speak, to go first. But Victor, I'm going to request you to keep your camera off just to maintain that bandwidth. And then we'll be asking other panelists questions as well. So Victor, if you can hear me, the question we have is, do you think we have enough data or evidence to make a policy for nutrition interventions, particularly in Asia and Pacific region? Or is there more evidence required on nutrient absorption from diets and the link in health and nutrition outcomes? So do you consider there's enough information already there to guide policymakers, or that we need to do further work? And again, maybe you can share on some of the experiences of the IAEA. And of timing, so maybe 3 minutes for you, Victor. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yasmin. Hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. I think we found the solution.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. Just to say that the answer is that more evidence is needed, but some work has been done. For example, Thailand and India have recently completed a pilot project through a coordinated research project on measuring protein quality, how amino acids are absorbed from plant-based diets, like mung bean, chickpea, and all those, and also contributing to how complementary foods are made from those foods. The conclusion was that the amino acids in these plant-based diets are not sufficient, and they need to be complemented with animal source foods to make sure that children are eating well. So, and in order to enhance that evidence base, the IEA is now supporting a large regional Asian project where there are over 10 countries participating, and the topic is to, this work is led under Thailand, and they are looking at expanded scope to look at protein quality from a diverse array of plant-based diets. And also, I mentioned that the link between gut health and diet quality is very, very intricate. So you can eat food, but if your gut cannot absorb it, then it amounts to nothing. So in another project in the Philippines, they are going to be addressing this particular topic with our support to look at how does exposure to a less hygienic, less sanitary environment contribute to nutrient malabsorption. So this project is starting in Philippines as we speak with IEA support. And the other project that the IEA is currently supporting is looking at vitamin A status in the population, both mothers and children. This is being done in Indonesia at the moment, but the scoping is that in future, it could also be addressed through a regional project. So these are very, very few examples of entry points through which negotiations can be held to see how also the ADB and the other stakeholders could come in. And I just wanted to say that apart from this topic of diet quality, the IEA is supporting work around early life nutrition assessment of breastfeeding practices. In a project in Kenya, we help to demonstrate that children from households with low household food security, they had less breast milk intake. So this is really important. Just going back to what Mandana was saying at the beginning. And we could also accurately support the measurement of body composition. As we know, excess adiposity, excess accumulation of fat is an important driving factor of overweight and obesity, and of course, nutrition-related cancer. So with that in mind, what I can say is that we have the tools. We just need partners, because as it has been said, alone you can do many things, but you cannot move very far. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Victor. And it was great to be able to listen to you sharing that experience, and also the work that you're doing, which is so, again, relevant for our regions that we cover. And your final message about we can't do it alone. I think many colleagues on this panel have been sharing the same point. And it's about how we collaborate to deliver. So we have one question which I was considering maybe I can pose to a number of you, and it really links in a little bit to what Victor was sharing about these challenges that are faced on nutrition. But I wanted to hear from you on spatial equity. We can see that rapid urbanization is one of the most important aspects of development in Asia. In fact, I mean, I would say Asia to a large extent is characterized by this tremendous urbanization we've seen. And this would imply tremendous pressures on the spatial balance of economic and social conditions. What I'm keen to hear from you are, what are the differences that you've observed in the nutritional issues between rural and urban areas? And again, maybe this one, there's a few of you, I don't know who wants to go first, but it does apply to many of you. Mandana, I wonder if you'd like to go first, and then I'll invite other panelists, because I think this is quite an important topic. We've learned about a lot of the challenges of nutrition, but that urban-rural context, I'm sure all of you could share insights. So perhaps we can dwell on this one a little bit and have a discussion. I'll start with Mandana first, and please, panelists, feel free to jump in. You can just put your hand up and put your mic on.
Thank you very much. This is really an important topic, and of course has many dimensions to think about. One thing that immediately came to my mind is actually some recent work we are doing in COVID response and COVID adaptations, and that was how actually, interestingly, in urban areas, especially in peri-urban poor populations, malnutrition, suddenly, there were a lot of nutrition vulnerabilities basically due to the COVID disruptions. Because these were, for example, a lot of households that their livelihoods were dependent on daily work and dependent on, the kind of things that were immediately disrupted, their access to health, all of that. So actually, while in some aspects there may generally be, more vulnerabilities in rural areas due to a lot of, the challenges in agriculture and availability and food access issues, especially when services are disrupted. What we noted is that these pockets of vulnerability within the urban areas are actually very hard to reach and very difficult to kind of cover with nutrition intervention. So that's one thing to think about, that how do we really address these kind of pockets of vulnerability in relatively better off, areas? That's one thing that has been challenging. and at least currently in nutrition. And then in general, yeah, I think that, with all the situations, the agricultural challenges with water, a lot of basically livelihoods being affected in that sense. Definitely on the access side, I think that you see many challenges in the rural areas. And then the focus on double burden that I was talking about, I think we are really seeing a different picture from the conventional. In the old days, people would talk about overnutrition being more a disease of an affluence, maybe the urban, more better off populations. And increasingly, we actually see that the double burden is not like that. Unfortunately, it's the same, like it's similar, poor, populations with less access to high quality foods. Even in the rural areas, that increasingly, and then increasingly in the poor in the urban areas, you see the double burden in those populations. So it's really the NCDs and the overnutrition are not diseases of affluence anymore. It's actually, unfortunately, the burden that increasingly is still for the poor and the underprivileged. So I think that's another aspect that also we have to be really thinking about and addressing in our program.
Thank you so much. Mandana, thanks for sharing on those points, which I think are very valid. And I saw many nodding as well with that. So I've got Britta's hand up, and then Jody, and then Kaz. So maybe in that order. Britta, if you go first, and then Jody.
Thank you very much. We've just concluded also on a study that looks at the resilience of urban food systems to produce healthy diets, and maybe I can find an opportunity to share the link to that. But overall, in addition to that, what we can also see in urban areas is that factor of caring for the children and the disruption of social structures, which we have not talked much about today, but it's a really important aspect, especially for people migrating to the urban cities. They often come on their own. Sometimes women come on their own, they don't have support systems, they don't earn that much. And the aspect of convenience in terms of the food choices becomes extremely important, because sometimes there is no access to cooking facilities. Women, the workforce is a big topic, which means time poverty again becomes an issue. And so the choices that families, but also women and people make, they are driven by additional factors in urban areas that can impact negatively, sometimes certainly positively, on diets and healthy nutrition. And in addition, then these water and sanitation aspects come into play, depending on whether we look into the more very poor areas like slums versus other areas. Let me stop here. It's a big topic. It's an important topic, and it would be nice to have a whole session on that, actually.
Good point, Britta. I so agree with you. I think this is such the heart of the matter of what we're seeing in Asia, at least what I can speak for Asia Pacific, where we're seeing this dramatic shift. And I can see so many of the panelists with their hands up now. Okay, so I believe I have Jody next. After Jody, Kaz, Professor Lada, and then Ahmed. Okay, so Jody, over to you.
Great. So yes, obviously I agree with everything that Britta just said. The specific issues in urban areas of convenience and the changes in the way that we're all living. I think the urban-rural issue is important, but also looking within urban areas. I live in Bangkok, which has some of the most, even within Bangkok, is one of the most unequal cities in the world. You have very rich and very poor. So it's important to not understand cities as a single entity. Of course, different populations are affected differently. In terms of vegetables, there are various things that we're looking at or that we are starting to understand in terms of specifically urban populations. So vegetables being, of course, a fresh food, need to be produced close to where they're eaten, or at least need to have good infrastructure to get to where they're eaten. So peri-urban production is an area that we're exploring actively in order to get vegetables closer to where they're eaten, provide jobs in and around cities. Of course, what's needed then is government, or at least local government infrastructure, to make sure that those companies are supported in order to get the vegetables where they need to go. The other big topic, of course, is urban gardens, and that's come up a lot during COVID, where people have been needing to look at how they access fresh foods. One of the big issues that's come up around that, I know certainly in the Philippines and I'm sure other places, is land use legislation. So a lot of urban areas that we might say would be great for vegetable production are actually off limits for various reasons because of local government legislation. So there are certainly things we can do to have vegetables produced closer to where they're eaten, but there are often governance and regulation issues that also need to be addressed around those great ideas. So let me leave it there.
Great point, Jodie. And I must say, we often within ADB are challenged by exactly that topic of land. Of course, we have a very rigorous safeguards policy, and land, whether it's for market spaces and even just getting produce to a market where it can be, will have that the food safety, the grading, and so on. The key issues often become the land availability, and maybe. At the end, when I come to Ahmed, maybe we can talk a bit about that as well in the context of soil quality. But over to Kaz next. Kaz, great to hear from your private sector perspectives too.
Thank you very much. I agree that all the discussion made, the rural versus urban area, and also high income, low income kind of difference. And I just wanted to add one more point, which we discussed recently with my colleagues, that is kind of immunity under this pandemic situation. So as everybody agreed, the health of immunity, the micronutrients played a very, very important role. But even in the urban side, high income, the community, there's still some the malnutrition of the multi-nutrients, the micronutrients there, like vitamin D or vitamin C, or that was one of the big issues, and also the non-communicative diseases, especially obesity or those kind of things, increase the risk of the COVID-19. So now we have the vaccination, but we need to prepare for the next, maybe a different type of a pandemic, maybe, or in future. Thinking about that, it is both for the rural area and those urban side, it is very important to think about the nutrition and the health of the immunity. That is one of the important key discussion point, I think.
Thank you, Kaz. Thanks for raising that point as well of looking at both of these dimensions. We go to Professor Nadi next to make her points, but I might also ask her a question once she's made her points on some of the effective mechanisms we can apply as well. But please go ahead.
Yes, I would like to add some information from the National Health Examination Survey, which is carried out in every 5 years. The conventional thinking is that we will see more undernutrition in the rural and more overweight, obesity in the urban area. But from the series of this survey, we see that the rural people is catching up on, on the side of overnutrition. We see more and more children in the rural area are getting overweight and obese. So I think it's because of the distribution of food and the pattern of food now we see not much different, and because of transportation, and because of the advertising and what you see in the media, so then not much different among these two sectors now. And it's interesting, we see higher from the latest, the most recent mixed survey, we see that Bangkok children has the highest incidence, prevalence of stunting, wasting. So that's quite shocking for people in the public health. but as the previous speaker has commented, in Bangkok, we have a pocket of people coming from rural, and after the economic disruption due to COVID, these people cannot get food as their counterpart in the rural area. Everything they have to buy. So we see this affect young children, and I think child nutritional status is one of the most sensitive indicators of economic and social development. I mean status. So when we see this, it means that our economic status is really very worse, in the worst situation. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Professor Lada. I'll come back to you in a bit with another question for everyone, but we'll go to Ahmed first. And Ahmed, please share your perspectives.
So thank you, Yasmin. So first, the evidence from Pakistan is that the nutrition profile of the rural population is worse than urban. And probable explanation is that the urban centers receive food from varied sources, and perhaps they have access to more variety, and therefore somehow perhaps that's the reason why the prevalence of serious challenges, whether they are children, pregnant women, or ordinary people, it's more serious in the rural parts. There's one point I would also like to make, and that is, as far as the urban supply of food is concerned, I think some very exciting changes are taking place. So we did a study on what is the time that a crop is, or especially a vegetable is harvested, and the time it takes to reach the plate. And because of the new technologies, and because of the increased use of mobile phone and all these new companies which promise to deliver farm fresh produce in a relatively shorter time. So their business basically thrives on getting food, especially vegetables, from the rural areas in a relatively shorter period, because if they take longer period, then the wastage is high. So that's, I think, a very exciting change that's happening in low medium income countries like Pakistan. I think it must be happening in other places that we are talking about in Asia Pacific. And I think in the next 4 to 5 years, as more and more mobile phones, their penetration increases, more broadband connectivity reaches, and more of such companies which would reduce the time it takes the harvest to reach the plate, that I think will have a direct impact on the quality of nutrition that people in the urban centers are receiving. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But then perhaps maybe my question is, I guess that's very much linked to the urban context. And I'm wondering on the rural challenges that we have, particularly with connectivity, where often it's very difficult. And I think in the case of Pakistan, we're talking about 30% losses, post-harvest losses on the farm, which are tremendously high for a country which has an agrarian economy. But I take on board that point about the peri-urban, and I think, was it Jody, I think you mentioned that as well earlier about urban farming, peri-urban farming. And the session that was on earlier before this session, I don't know if any of you attended, in that there was a very good example from India on hydroponics and use of hydroponics to supply urban centers and giving that experience to customers as well to come and experience that. So I do see that there is growing scope. I don't know, Jody, if you had any perspectives, and then I'll move to another question once you've responded, or if anyone else wants to respond.
Yes, not my area that far up the food system, but absolutely anything from hydroponics to standard growing practices, anything that is appropriate to the area and gets vegetables closer to where they're eaten. Surely there's room for all.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks for sharing on that. So now there was a question posted in the chat box And I thought it had to be one of the most challenging questions that was asked. And I think it was the first one asked. So it was about finding an effective mechanism to tackle malnutrition in this region. And it's, of course, a very broad topic, but maybe I can come to each of you to listen to your wisdom on this very large question, which maybe was the driver of this panel as well, but clearly is incredibly important for all of us, and particularly for an organization like ADB, which is working really at the heart of many of these issues. So let's see, who do we go? I'm going to start from our keynote speaker first, Mandana, and maybe ask you first on what do you consider the most effective mechanism? And perhaps it doesn't need to be a single solution, but perhaps some of the features of it.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. You know, we have such a diverse set of colleagues. I think I can just only cover a small portion of what can be addressed and is important. But I guess the point I was trying to make, and I thought would be my addition to the discussion today, was the fact that we still have relatively simple, low-cost, proven nutrition interventions that can go to scale in Asia. You know, things like maternal nutrition or early and exclusive breastfeeding, or some of these, again, we call them nutrition specific. It may not come as a first choice to, you know, let's say ADB or a more kind of higher level upstream, programmers. And but I think it's important to recognize that these pathways have common, you know, ways of working, and they're actually investments in some of these, or co-investments, or sharing investments in some of these nutrition specific areas could still actually have multiple benefits also for those broader economic productivity and longer term, you know, reduction of healthcare costs, and, you know, increasingly the data and evidence is strong there. So while it's amazing, I mean, I'm sure innovation and looking across, you know, what can be done in many areas in economy and in food systems is important. We should not forget that we still actually have some of these relatively small, easily scalable solutions, and especially in Asia where systems work. And there are opportunities to actually expand on those. And that, I guess that was what I wanted to highlight, not as the only solution. And I'm very acutely aware of multi-sector and multi-system and multi-interventions needed, but maybe just making sure that they are in the mix and they're still part of the investments, investment cases when we are engaging the broader policy discussions. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Mandana. And yeah, fully hear that, this combination effect. So maybe I'm going to ask, would anybody like to go next? Would you, if you would like to put your hand up, or I can pick somebody out of our panel?
Yasmin, can I say something?
Oh, please.
So I think building on what Mandana has just said, I think one of the important interventions that people have identified is the dairy and livestock sector. And Dr. Ladda was also talking about how, you know, the problem can be solved for the rural population. And I think a lot of that has to do with livestock, and where Asian Development Bank and other development partners can come in is to increase the access to finance, which I think by virtue of your name is something that you do, is to all these people. I think we have seen enough evidence that agri-credit is one of agri-sector, which is of course what we are discussing today, is one of the least serviced sectors when it comes to access to finance. And unless that problem is solved, you will not have investment made or capital goods created in those areas, for example, livestock. And that really impacts the food security and nutrition. Thank you.
Very valid, I have to say. I think it's one of the critical challenges constantly being faced is this lack of access to credit. But I see that some of the major challenges of getting that credit to the hands of people can often be the major impediment of how does it get there. And there was this question on our chat box as well about looking at social safety nets and cash transfers. which we can come back to, circle back to. I'm going to request Victor or Kofi, who we haven't heard from for a while, if they'd like to share any perspectives on this solutions or effective mechanisms on tackling malnutrition.
Okay, Yasmin, if I may go.
Yes, please.
What I will say is that, as we all know, when it comes to tackling malnutrition, biofortification has played an integral part. We saw in the presentations. And when it talks in terms of the biofortification, especially in crops, we are looking at three major components. One is the plant breeding, which mutation breeding comes under it, the transgenics techniques, and then also agronomic practices. These are the three main areas of biofortification that has played parts when it comes to this biofortification. People were talking about rice in this presentation. People were talking about some pulses also here. These were all achieved through biofortification. So, integral parts, even though it's a multi-sectorial approach, I think one integral part have to be at the perspective of the biofortification, and therefore coming from nuclear approach, I would say the mutation induction can be one of the key parts that we should look. Because the idea is that at the end of the day, when the development is done, it becomes comparatively cheaper for the end users to use, especially if these are for farmers. Two, we all know that there are a lot of underutilized crops all over. For example, if you take some of these pear millets, if you look at the nutrient content in them, it can be extremely high. So these are all the areas that we can exploit in terms of the umbrella of the biofortification, therefore breeding, transgenics, and then the agronomic practices to exploit and include into any other, to fit them into any other approaches that I think the ADB would like to have a look there. This explains why in my presentation, I did indicate that the IAEA is coming up with a new consolidated research project, a CRP, that we are going to look at how underutilized crops can be exploited to fit into this nutritional security. And this will be an area that I think we may need to have a lot of discussions with, focused discussion with your team, and we see how we can put it up. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Yasmin, if I could just add, because Kofi has said everything I wanted to say as well, just to re-emphasize the need for research as we look at what has worked and what can work. Research is very, very important, both proof of principle, but also operational research. So that's why this is the area actually IAEA is focusing on, to be able to give people tools to generate information to be able to assess the impact of intervention. So I just wanted to add that aspect, that we shouldn't just focus on doing things without also having actual reliable data, as Mandana already emphasized previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor, for re-emphasizing that point. I think it's a very important point and touches upon a number of presenters' points that they made. So we have just 2 minutes left for panelist perspective. So I'm going to give Professor Lada, Jody, Britta, maybe you have 45 seconds each to make your points. And then
yes. Thank you very much. I think it depends on the seriousness of the problem. It is very serious. We need to give supplementation right away, so to solve that problem. Learning from Thailand experience, we building on this project, having free school lunch, free milk program, and then we by economic growth, then we getting better and less undernutrition. But during COVID outbreak, I have and during lockdown, I have a chance to talk with people who organizing food bank in the city and in the rural area as well. And these people with subsistence agriculture, they have their own food, and these people are the people who feed the people who are in the cash crop economy, cash crop agriculture, and also feed to the city. So in the emergency, we need all that. But in the long term, I think the important thing is nutrition literacy. That is the long run. We need to base on that. And with this advance of technology, I think we need to use the benefit, advantage of technology to help people to easily understand the nutrition, food, and health. And I think that's all in 45 seconds. Okay.
Okay. We may be out of time already. So Jody, Britta, Kaz, I'm really sorry. Time's up, and I'm getting all my alarms ringing here. But at least from what I've learned from this panel, I'm extremely thankful to all of you, and I'm sure the audience is as well. This has been a fascinating learning experience. I'd be really keen if we could continue to have this type of discussion. And I think, I can't remember who said it, but maybe that rural-urban context is the one that would be really useful as well from an ADB perspective, that we could really dig deeper in. So I'm going to request our organizers that I think this merits a further session, which is really dedicated for ADB on this area. I'm so thankful to all of you. It was wonderful hearing your perspectives, so much knowledge, so much insight, and such diverse experiences. A pleasure to be the moderator for this excellent session. And I'm going to now request our audience to complete the evaluation form that should be coming up on your screens anytime now. And then I'll be handing over to my ADB colleagues who are on the call already, Narayan Iyer, who is our Senior Natural Resources and Agriculture Specialist, and Kazuko Ogosahara, who is also Senior Natural Resources and Agriculture Specialist. So thank you all.
Thanks, Yasmin.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just here to provide a synthesis of a couple of sessions that we've already taken place, and I'll be followed by Kazuko, who will synthesize the sessions that I haven't covered. I'm first talking about the deep dive session on urban controlled environment farming, and what we saw in that session is that this is very important to withstand disruptions in markets, which are increasing in frequency, and to meet the demand for fresh and nutritious food. With less reliance on markets where food is, we can see, frequently getting contaminated. Examples were mentioned of small-scale vertical farming and hydroponics from India and from Nauru. We also saw, however, that there are some constraints. The success and scaling up of this type of farming and hydroponics would require more support. And one of the biggest challenges faced by vertical farming is a lack of right seed varieties. Current seeds are meant for soil, and as a result, their yields in vertical farming or hydroponics are quite low, and that makes it a costlier affair. So in order to make the produce from these techniques affordable for consumers, it is very important to develop the right kind of seeds for them. We also saw how Philippines is showing the way in how right government policies can be a strong enabler, and DMCs in the region could benefit from their experience. We also saw how awareness of home farming kind of technology and kits is very important, and that training is a very key factor in scaling up these kind of activities. Then we had a technical session on pathways to sustainable and inclusive food systems, which highlighted the fact that biodiversity loss and climate change are more serious issues than ever, and tackling these issues is critical to achieving sustainable and inclusive food systems. It noted that while meat consumption and rice cultivation are major contributors to GHG emissions, but solving these issues and others needs a systems approach to food security. Tackling individual issues piecemeal may not get us there. Multiple stakeholders across public sector, private sector, civil society organizations, etc., need to present a united front, work together, and organizations like the Asian Development Bank can be a convener and an honest broker to bring together various stakeholders, for this kind of integrated approach. We also saw that gender inequality in agriculture and food systems, that was highlighted, and that it is endemic and is further exacerbated by climate change. Adaptation measures should ensure that this is not further compounded. A gender-responsive approach to climate-smart agriculture is the need of the hour. Measures should reduce women's labor burden, provide them with more information, as well as make resources more accessible. It was also mentioned that structural economic transformation is needed to pull agriculture, make it more efficient out of where it is. But it is yet to be achieved, and what is needed is policy, financing, and incentives so that provided to industry and services, so that we could have labor slowly finding its way into industry and services as well, instead of remaining stuck in agriculture where it's probably not required. Private sector investment is critical for food system transformation, and it must also be remembered that while doing all this, food systems have to also be environmentally sustainable. We also saw that small-scale farmers are clearly the foundation of food systems. Statistics show that the majority, almost 85% of land is still by smallholders, but they only produce 25% of food. So clearly productivity needs to increase and they need more help. However, only a very negligible proportion of finance, especially climate finance, is targeted towards small-scale agriculture. SMEs are equally critical and almost equally neglected. Various pilots have demonstrated the efficacy of supporting them in achieving more sustainability. And lastly, we saw a case study of Vietnam, an agri-based economy, where one of the highlights was its low carbon crop value chain development, which drives policy as well as response measures, and which could be a model for other DMCs to seek inspiration from. I'll stop here and I'll hand it over to Kazuko. Thank you.
Thank you, Narayan. So I will summarize very quickly. The final session was on the nutrition security. So nutrition has not been prioritized against other interventions ever, but must be an integral component of every development intervention. It was shown that the early life and the nutrition influence not only children to poor physical and cognitive development in life, but also increase risk of non-communicable disease in adulthood. So, the Mandana revealed the opportunity that there were three benefits from the investment in maternal and early childhood nutrition interventions. That is a benefit for one generation in addressing both under and overnutrition will carry. And the third is it will be carried through to the next generation. It was also mentioned that people in Asia and the Pacific face not only a double burden of nutrition, but a triple burden. So it means undernutrition and overnutrition, and moreover, micronutrient deficiencies such as anemia. To tackle the burden of malnutrition, cross-sectoral approaches are needed based on data and reliable expert analysis. Within the post-pandemic recovery efforts, there are opportunities for integration for example, in the social safety net platforms. I think there were 3 takeaways from the presentation of all panelists and speakers. First, how to access healthier diets. It includes the dietary choice of consumers. Professor Lada showed some interventions in Thailand to bring the healthy food environments in the market and school. And there is a need for dimension of behavior change methods on equality of food. And also the affordability of a healthy diet is important. So lack of knowledge and education and factors such as distance to market are also impair poor people's access to quality food. Second, the importance of science and technology. So diet has 2 important dimensions. It is quantity and quality. Especially on quality, we need more evidence on nutrient absorption into the body. It was very interesting such an isotope technology was used in this field. And also regarding evidence, Jody showed that study results in Asia, so about the vegetable consumption. So it is also important for communities and local governments to work together to gather data on the progress and challenges faced by the programs. Finally, it is mentioned in other sessions too, cross-collaboration is important. As a voice from private sector, President Kazu introduced a DSM's commitment at Food System Summit on September 2021. To achieve this commitment, they are working on developing partnership to scale up micronutrient supplementation with government and private sectors. In this way, partnership is key to solving the enormous problem of nutrition insecurity. It is important to work in coordination to avoid any duplication of efforts and missed opportunities to make the best use of available knowledge and financial resources. Let me stop here. Before close the session, please answer the questionnaire for the evaluation. Thank you very much.